What you doing attached to my truck like this?
Anyone who watched the Dukes of Hazzard remembers Cooter's tow truck. It was the vehicle that hauled General Lee back to the garage after every jump, chase, and spectacular crash. The bright orange Dodge Charger may have been the show's biggest star, but Cooter's truck was never far behind. Although it never became as famous as the General, it appeared throughout the series and became one of the show's most recognizable support vehicles. However, one of the show's best-kept secrets was that more than one truck played the role. After the series ended, the primary truck remained in Hollywood until its unexpected end. Join us as we uncover what really happened to Cooter's truck.
You know, Uncle Jesse, I believe I just heard I got an emergency call.
yeah, I think you have.
Hey! Let me down! Help! Let me down!
The Dukes of Hazzard premiered on CBS in 1979 and quickly became one of the biggest television hits of its era. Created by Guy Waldron, the series followed cousins Bo and Luke Duke as they outsmarted the corrupt Boss Hogg and the bumbling Sheriff Roscoe P. Coltrane, while racing across dirt roads in the famous Orange General Lee. Combining action, comedy, and family-friendly storytelling, the show became known for its high-speed chases and memorable cast of characters. At its peak, it ranked among the most-watched programs on American television and turned General Lee into one of the most recognizable cars in pop culture. But keeping that famous Charger on the road required more than daring drivers. It also depended on one man working behind the scenes of Hazzard County. As the owner of the county's garage, Ben Jones, better known as Cooter, wasn't the hero behind the wheel or the villain plotting against the Duke family. He was the mechanic who kept the story moving. Every time the General Lee returned battered after another impossible jump or high-speed chase, it was Cooter who somehow got it back on the road. Ben Jones brought the role to life with an authenticity that made Cooter feel like an essential part of Hazzard County rather than just another supporting character. As the Dukes of Hazzard grew into one of America's most popular television shows, the demands behind the scenes grew with it. During its 7-season run, the production is estimated to have used more than 300 Dodge Chargers, with stunt jumps and crashes destroying them faster than the studio could replace them. Compared to the General Lee, Cooter's tow truck never attracted the same attention, but it became a familiar part of Hazzard County, appearing whenever the General Lee needed rescuing. As it turned out, the story behind that truck became far more remarkable than anyone ever realized. Most fans remember Cooter's GMC tow truck, but it wasn't the first to appear on the series. That honor belonged to a battered brown Chevrolet pickup that was reportedly acquired from a junkyard in Rockdale County, Georgia, where the show's first episodes were filmed. Interestingly, the truck didn't even begin as Cooter's. In the pilot episode, Cooter was driving a red and white 1976 Ford Gran Torino, while the Chevrolet appeared briefly in the background. It officially became Cooter's tow truck in the 4th episode, though the iconic Hazzard County Garage lettering wasn't added until the 13th episode. For all 5 of the episodes filmed in Georgia, there was only one of these trucks. That single, worn-out Chevrolet did everything the production asked of it during filming in Georgia, but its luck ran out once filming moved to California. When production relocated to Warner Brothers Studios in Burbank, the truck traveled west alongside the rest of the production's vehicles and equipment. Before it could settle into its new role, however, it ran into a problem no one had anticipated. On its way to a filming location, the truck was stopped by the California Highway Patrol. After inspecting it, the officers ruled that it wasn't fit to operate on California's public roads and refused to let it pass through. The production had little choice but to pull the truck from service, bringing the working life of Cooter's first tow truck to an abrupt end. The truck made its final appearance in Double Sting, where Bo used it during the rescue of Daisy and Cooter from a group of kidnappers. At the time, most viewers had no idea they were watching it for the last time. By then, however, Warner Brothers had already introduced another tow truck that would gradually replace the aging Chevrolet. Once the original was pulled from service, it quietly disappeared from the series, bringing the first chapter of Cooter's tow truck history to an unceremonious close. Unlike the General Lee, which would go on to become one of the most collectible television cars ever built, the old Chevrolet never enjoyed a second life. It wasn't preserved because no one expected it to become famous. Warner Brothers kept it simply because it was still useful. Having reached the end of its usefulness, the truck is widely believed to have been scrapped after being taken out of service. Retiring the original Chevrolet did not leave Cooter's garage empty for long. Over the next few seasons, Warner Brothers introduced a series of replacement tow trucks as production continued to evolve. The first was a red, white, and blue 1967 Ford F350. which initially appeared as a Hazzard County Police Department vehicle before being reassigned to Cooter's garage later in the first season. Like the Chevrolet before it, there was only one of these trucks, so it had to be shared between the main production unit and the stunt crew. By the third season, another replacement had arrived, a yellow 1979 Ford F-35. Custom began appearing around Cooter's garage, alternating with the older red, white, and blue Ford through much of seasons 3 and 4 before disappearing from the series. The truck that ultimately defined Cooter, however, arrived later in season 4. After first appearing in Birds Gotta Fly and becoming firmly established in Miss Tri-Counties, the GMC Wrecker remained Cooter's primary tow truck for the rest of the series. Although its exact model year has never been officially confirmed, it is generally identified as a late 1960s GMC C-Series. By the time the Dukes of Hazzard ended in 1985, the GMC had become inseparable from Cooter himself. It appeared so consistently during the show's final seasons that many viewers assumed it was the only tow truck he had ever driven. Unlike its predecessors, however, the GMC wasn't limited to a single vehicle. As production became more demanding, Warner Brothers eventually relied on 3 nearly identical wreckers to keep filming on schedule. To casual viewers, they looked identical, but each carried small identifying marks that would later prove surprisingly important. One had a distinctive white scrape across its front bumper, another carried blue paint overspray behind the cab, while the third could be identified by the pattern of bolts securing its front bumper. When the Dukes of Hazzard ended in 1985, those details became the only way of telling the trucks apart. The 2 Ford F-35Os disappeared without leaving a documented trail, and they are believed to have been scrapped alongside the hundreds of General Lees the production wore out over 7 seasons. 2 of the 3 GMC wreckers vanished just as quietly. Only one could still be identified thanks to the white scrape on its front bumper and the blue overspray behind the cab. Those small imperfections would later help fans piece together the truck's complete history. And when they did, they discovered its story hadn't actually begun in Hazzard County. Long before it became a familiar vehicle outside the Hazzard County garage, the truck had already appeared on the big screen. In 1980, roughly a year before joining the Dukes of Hazzard, it was used as Orville Boggs' wrecker in Any Which Way You Can. At the time, it was simply another working vehicle doing exactly what the script required. No one on the production could have guessed that the truck would go on to become one of the most recognizable vehicles associated with the series. Because both productions were made by Warner Brothers, the transition from one project to the other was a practical one rather than an extraordinary coincidence. Instead of being retired after the film, the truck simply found another job. When it first appeared on the Dukes of Hazzard, it didn't yet look exactly the way fans remember it today. The truck debuted during Season 4 before undergoing several modifications, including a different truck bed and the replacement of its Chevrolet grille with a GMC grille. Those changes gave it the appearance that became inseparable from Cooter Davenport throughout the remainder of the series. By the time the Dukes of Hazzard ended, millions of viewers had seen the truck countless times without realizing it had already enjoyed a previous career on the big screen. Even more remarkably, its story didn't end when the cameras stopped rolling. Warner Brothers kept the GMC as part of its fleet of picture vehicles, ready to appear whenever another production needed an old tow truck. Its first confirmed appearance after the Dukes of Hazzard came the following year on Scarecrow and Mrs. King. At first glance, it looked like a completely different vehicle. The familiar Hazzard County garage lettering had been covered with the name Hillbish Tow It, making it appear to belong to an entirely different towing company. To almost everyone watching, it was just another truck in the background. A handful of Dukes of Hazzard fans noticed something everyone else missed. Beneath the new lettering were the same small imperfections the truck had carried for years. The distinctive white scrape across the front bumper was still there, along with the patch of blue overspray behind the cab. Those marks confirmed it was the same truck that had spent years parked outside Cooter's garage. That discovery encouraged fans to start looking for it elsewhere. As they revisited old television shows and films, the truck began turning up again. It appeared briefly in Just the 10 of Us and could even be spotted through a diner window in an episode of Head of the Class. None of the appearances lasted more than a few moments, but together they revealed something no one had expected. Long after leaving Hazzard County, Cooter's tow truck had become one of Warner Brothers' hardest-working picture vehicles. By the late 1990s, Cooter's tow truck had already outlasted the Dukes of Hazzard by more than a decade. Instead of being retired when the series ended, it continued working on other productions before eventually leaving Warner Brothers and finding its way to 20th Century Fox. Exactly how it got there has never been publicly documented, but in 1998, the truck landed what would become the final role of its career. That role came in Dreamland, a sixth-season episode of The X-Files. The truck appears outside a gas station as Fox Mulder stops to buy a bag of sunflower seeds. To almost everyone watching, it was just another old tow truck sitting in the background, but longtime Dukes of Hazzard fans immediately recognized it. The white scrape across the front bumper was still there. So was the patch of blue overspray behind the cab. Nearly 2 decades after its first screen appearance, those same imperfections once again gave away its identity. A few moments later, the truck met the fate it had somehow avoided for nearly 18 years. During one of the episode's major action sequences, the gas station was destroyed in a massive explosion. According to longtime Dukes of Hazzard vehicle researchers, the GMC used in that scene wasn't repaired or returned to service. Instead, it was destroyed during filming, bringing nearly 2 decades of screen work to an end. In many ways, it was a fitting conclusion. The General Lee became a collector's icon almost as soon as the series ended. Cooter's tow truck simply kept working. It moved from one production to the next, never treated as a television icon, and never displayed in a museum. Today, the original truck is gone, but its story survives through the fans who followed its trail across nearly 2 decades of film and television. For a vehicle that spent most of its screen time parked outside a small garage in the fictional town of Hazzard, that's a remarkable legacy.